Things just went from bad to worse for Snow White, and it's shaping up to become one of the biggest bombs of all time.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
So we're going to see what's going to happen here. Adam.
I'm so disappointed in Disney. And I'm not saying this as a moviegoer. I'm not saying this as someone who's railing against DEI. I'm saying this as a stock owner in the company of Disney.
But listen here as the star, Rachel Zegler, does a massive backflip. She's gone from bagging the original story to saying it's an example to admire.
That is part of the beauty of Snow White. It has been for 88 years now that she just sees the good in everyone and everything. And I hope that I and so many people who watch this film can embody that as well.
I just don't understand how your story about feminist empowerment is everything was great when a man was controlling the kingdom. A woman takes over, the kingdom goes to shit. She kicks out the younger woman because she's jealous about it. And then the younger woman goes to another man's house and cleans up all their houses. And this is the story about feminist empowerment? It's like some kind of sick.
It was supposed to be a magical revival, a glittering remake of Disney's most iconic fairy tale. But instead, it just became a disaster. The live-action Snow White reboot has just triggered a cultural meltdown, and leading the march off a cliff is none other than Rachel Zegler, the Gen Z princess who swapped glass slippers for combat boots and a microphone full of contempt. From TikTok takedowns to theatrical boycotts, this isn't just bad PR. This is scorched earth brand collapse. Will Disney recover from all these recent disasters? Or is this the beginning of the end? Let's find out. From fairy tale to firestorm, how Snow White became a PR horror show.
I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
It started with a crown and a press tour. But instead of enchantment, Rachel Zegler delivered disdain. In interview after interview, the West Side Story breakout spoke less like a rising star and more like a PR intern gone rogue. Calling the original Snow White weird, creepy, and dated, she didn't just critique the 1937 classic, she practically spit on Walt Disney's grave. Imagine this: Disney, the sacred temple of childhood nostalgia, handing its most beloved story to a lead actress who openly mocks it. What could go wrong? Spoiler, everything. The internet caught fire faster than Maleficent's spellbook. Clips of Zegler smirking through sound bites about how her version of Snow White won't be saved by a man and doesn't dream of love went viral, but not in a good way. Suddenly, Not My Snow White was trending, memes were merciless, and the backlash grew teeth. And this wasn't just from the usual suspects. Even fans who wanted a fresh take found themselves squinting at Disney's creative decisions. Instead of a feminist reimagining, the movie began to look like a lecture disguised as entertainment. People weren't asking for a rescue romance, they were just begging to not be insulted by the person wearing the tiara. And with every new promo clip, the vibe got worse. The dwarves replaced by CGI magical creatures to avoid stereotypes. The costumes? Drab, draped, and depressingly modern. The tone? Less Once Upon a Time and more corporate diversity workshop. What was meant to be a reintroduction of the world's first Disney princess became the centerpiece of a PR crisis, one confessional video at a time. Rachel Zegler versus the internet, a masterclass in career self-sabotage.
It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Rachel Zegler didn't just lose the crowd, she scorched it. One sarcastic quip at a time, she turned the court of public opinion into a coliseum. And like every good Roman tragedy, the lead didn't even realize she was bleeding until the lions were already feasting. Her now infamous press tour clips read less like media training and more like accidental comedy. In one viral interview, she quipped, "It's not 1937 anymore," as if viewers needed a reminder they weren't watching a black and white cartoon. In another, she declared Snow White doesn't need love because she's focused on leadership. Ah yes, the CEO Princess Pipeline. Truly what Walt envisioned. Fans began dissecting every soundbite like a post-mortem. Why was she so angry? Why accept the role if you hate the source material? Was this Disney's plan, or did they just lose control of their own star? Things escalated when Zegler responded to critics on social media, not with grace or humor, but with snark. Commenters were labeled misogynists. Dissent was dismissed as anti-woman. And the internet, it doesn't forget, and it definitely doesn't forgive when arrogance meets irony. Her most loyal defenders started to retreat. Even those sympathetic to a more progressive princess began to cringe. What was meant to be empowerment started to feel like contempt. Instead of a heroine, Zegler came across like the villain in a LinkedIn TED Talk. And here's the irony. She wasn't wrong to want a modern Snow White. But tone matters. Delivery matters. When you lecture an audience that came for magic and instead get moral superiority, don't be shocked when they stop clapping. Free the woke reboot nobody asked for and everybody hated.
To everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her. And I can only hope that despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them,
She's a good actress.
that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Wow. The ego on this girl is ridiculous.
If there was ever a blueprint for how to alienate both sides of the cultural aisle in record time, Disney's Snow White remake nailed it. Conservatives slammed it for being woke, progressives cringed at its performative feminism, and audiences everywhere asked the same question: who exactly was this movie for? The reboot stripped the original of everything charming, magical, and frankly, fun. The classic tale of a kind girl overcoming evil through hope and heart, gone, replaced with a self-serious sermon about self-empowerment delivered by a protagonist who seems to hate her own genre. And the romance? Obliterated. Prince Charming isn't even a thing in this version. He's basically been erased into oblivion, like Disney's trying to cancel the concept of affection altogether. The worst part, Disney tried to spin it. They framed it as reclaiming the narrative, as though updating a fairy tale for modern audiences meant demolishing it entirely. But they forgot that fairy tales are timeless because of their simplicity, not in spite of it. And audiences weren't buying the rewrite. Not when ticket sales tanked, merchandise flopped, and even loyal Disney fans openly declared they'd skip it. The cost? Reportedly hundreds of millions in production, reshoots, and post-production panic. And with each Rachel Zegler soundbite, that number only looked more painful. The marketing campaign turned into damage control. The trailer comments were flooded with thumbs down. And early test screenings? Let's just say Cinderella wouldn't have needed a fairy godmother to know this carriage was already a pumpkin. Disney tried to sell a message. Instead, they delivered a warning, a reminder that if you strip a story of everything people loved and then mock them for ever loving it, you're not reimagining a legacy. You're lighting it on fire. Chapter 4, Disney's billion-dollar identity crisis. Let's be clear, Disney's problem isn't just Snow White. It's that Disney doesn't seem to know what it is anymore. Once the undisputed master of wonder and whimsy, the Mouse House now feels like a confused conglomerate trapped in a perpetual identity crisis. Are they selling nostalgia or reinventing everything for clout-chasing headlines? Are they chasing audiences or lecturing them? The Snow White catastrophe was merely the loudest siren in a chorus of bad decisions. Disney's recent track record reads like a self-inflicted demolition list. The Marvels bombed, Lightyear flopped, Indiana Jones 5 crashed harder than a boulder. And now this, the cornerstone princess of their empire being paraded in front of the world with a storyline that screams, "We don't trust the original enough to leave it intact." Investors noticed, stockholders winced, internal memos leaked. Rumors of panic inside the castle walls spread like wildfire. And somewhere in all this, the mouse with white gloves is sweating. See, Disney built a kingdom on universal appeal. They knew how to charm both kids and adults, liberals and conservatives, dreamers and cynics. But lately, they've been playing ideological roulette. alienating huge chunks of their fan base with half-baked progressivism that feels more like a marketing checklist than an artistic vision. And nowhere is that clearer than with Snow White. They took a story about kindness and turned it into a cynical manifesto. They replaced wonder with warnings, magic with messaging, and now they're paying the price in money, in reputation, and in trust. The House of Mouse may be a billion-dollar fortress, but even castles crumble when built on arrogance and Twitter buzzwords. 5. When princesses preach. The rise and fall of the girl boss fairy tale. There was a time when audiences cheered for strong, independent princesses. Belle loved books. Mulan fought wars. Tiana built her own business. These women broke molds without needing to break the story. But then came the girl bossification of Disney, where every heroine had to become a motivational speaker with a side hustle. And suddenly, the magic faded. Rachel Zegler's Snow White wasn't just rewritten. She was stripped of vulnerability, kindness, and joy. She wasn't allowed to sing to birds or dream of love. No, she had to lecture viewers about inner strength while trudging through grayscale sets that looked more like dystopian tax offices than enchanted forests. This wasn't empowerment, it was propaganda wearing a tiara, and audiences felt it. Instead of feeling uplifted, they felt talked down to. Instead of escapism, they got exposition. Instead of love, they got leadership. What was once a gentle story about compassion and courage became a boardroom PowerPoint on personal branding. Worse, the film's creators acted like any criticism of this new direction was inherently sexist or bigoted, as if disliking a joyless protagonist made you anti-progress. But that's the trick of bad faith storytelling. It hides behind good intentions, then blames the audience when it fails. The girl boss princess didn't fail because she was strong. She failed because she was hollow. Because Disney forgot that strength isn't just defiance, it's grace, kindness, warmth. And because when every line is a slogan, there's nothing left to feel. It's apologies spin and radio silence. Disney's damage control nightmare. By the time the backlash reached full boil, Disney did what any cornered conglomerate does. They panicked silently. The PR team entered witness protection. Interviews stopped. Social media went dark. Trailers were quietly pulled and re-uploaded. Release dates shifted like tectonic plates. It was as if the entire studio collectively decided to pretend Snow White wasn't happening, despite having poured hundreds of millions into it. And Zegler vanished. Not fired, just missing. Her once constant interviews disappeared. Disney made no public statement about the controversy, opting instead for the most lethal response in Hollywood: complete silence. Behind closed doors, insiders whispered of emergency edits, reshoots, budget hemorrhages. Meanwhile, fan discontent boiled hotter. The longer Disney stayed quiet, the louder the criticism became. And here's the kicker: they still don't get it. This wasn't about politics. It wasn't about progress. It was about forgetting the audience, about treating beloved stories like disposable marketing assets, about hiring actors who sneer at the material and expecting applause anyway. Now, even the most loyal Disney defenders are drawing lines in the sand. Parents, fans, nostalgia junkies, they're done. Not with change, but with condescension disguised as content. Because when the studio behind Dreams starts producing tone-deaf lectures, it's only a matter of time before even the fairy godmother gives up. Disney thought they were rewriting the fairy tale. Instead, they rewrote the rulebook on how to tank a cultural legacy. The Rachel Zegler Snow White debacle is more than a flop. It's a warning shot. Drop a comment below and subscribe for more content.